and welcome to the Say Report, the podcast that's not ashamed to say we love Coyote Ugly. No matter what Sejan may say to stop that, or in spite of what I just said, we love Coyote Ugly. But we're not going to talk about how much we love Coyote Ugly on this episode. Oh, no. Earlier in April, we promised you a very special episode. And Sejan, do you want to tell the people what the subject of that very special episode is going to be?
I have a sneaking suspicion it's going to be Coyote Ugly.
Oh, it's going to be about Coyote Ugly.
Okay, all right. All those girls are dead now.
I need you tonight.
Oh, man. All right. Yeah, apparently we're doing that is what we're doing. Oh, God.
A little bit of inside baseball. Sejan didn't know that until I just announced it.
Yeah, if my nonplussed reaction was not some cue to that. But, apparently we're going to talk about some Coyote Ugly. So I'm going to have to get boned up on my bar dancing. So
definitely. I would go out to a bar before we record. Like, really, this is the end of it. This is the promise to you, the listener. Coming this week, a 30-minute episode about nothing but Coyote Ugly. Set a reminder in your cell phone. Tell Siri to make an appointment for the Say Report very special episode, Coyote Ugly Edition.
You're really leaning into the whole we're a show about everything.
Also, as I was coming downstairs, Coyote Ugly started on HBO, and I cursed the heavens because I could not watch Coyote Ugly. I'm a big fan of Piper Perabo, but you're going to find out more about that on Thursday. Now to the episode proper. How you doing, Sejan?
I am doing fantastic, man. Like, especially now that we're going to talk about Coyote Ugly for half an hour. Not today, though. I need to remind myself not to talk about it today.
Yeah. Anytime anyone says Coyote Ugly after this moment, the other person has to go like we're Cesar Millan, and you're being a bad dog.
Nice. Oh man, no, I'm doing really good. I'm hanging out. My semester is winding down, so I'm kind of getting some school stuff finished. So all of the students are all in give me free grades mode. So I'm dealing with that right now. No, it's been pretty cool. I've been avoiding work as much as possible, and in doing so, I've actually I've been watching The Batman. Have you seen this one?
The Batman is the one that came out right after Batman Begins, right?
Yeah, and funny that you mentioned that because my first thought as I was watching it is like, oh, this is like the anti-Nolan Batman. Like, not that it has anything to say about like the Nolan verse or anything like that, but it's basically doing everything to not be a grounded real show, unlike the Nolan movies. And like, that's really interesting to me because if you think back to Batman the Animated Series, which was the one in the 90s, it actually kind of leaned really heavy into the Burton-esque like Gotham, what's the word? Gothic Gotham that's in the Tim Burton movies, right?
Well,
so like Batman the Animated Series kind of took that and ran with it.
But arguably, the Tim Burton films, right, were very grounded in reality. I mean,
in a Tim Burton reality,
But I mean, so like the animated series was the place where they were able to flex their muscles and sort of lean into some of the more fantastic elements. You have Mr. Freeze, you have like Poison Ivy being like that. Clayface, I feel really got his start in the animated series.
Harley Quinn, I mean, right? Like that's where she got created, right? So like so that's the other thing is that Batman the Animated Series, right, is known for not just being a good representation of the universe as we knew it, but also furthering and like pushing progressive the universe, right? Whereas so far, and I haven't watched all of the Batman yet, but it doesn't seem like it really wants to do that. In fact, what it seems like it wants to do is actually kind of not worry about lore too much. So like, for instance, like Victor Freeze, what's the origin story that you know of for Victor Freeze?
Well, the Victor Freeze story that I feel like everybody knows now is that he was a renowned scientist. And he was working to find a cure for his wife, Nora Freeze, who had a degenerative disorder. I always kind of like likened it to Lou Gehrig's disease. And he was trying, so he put her into suspended animation until he could find a cure for that.
Yeah.
And then when his funding was cut, he was actually damaged by the same cryogenic chemicals that turned him into the Mr. Freeze that we know and love today.
Well, the Batman says, fuck your origin story, and just makes him a diamond thief.
Not only is he a diamond thief, he's like a common criminal.
He's a common criminal, and he just falls into a cryogenic chamber and gets electrocuted at the same time, and somehow that turns him into Mr. Freeze.
Yeah, electricity plus something is a lot of the origin story for this show, as far as I recall.
Yeah.
And that's
In
sort
fact,
of
I
like
just watched
how
one about Man Bat, and they definitely at some point are like, "Oh, he's been taking the serum," and at some point he licked an electrical socket, and now he's Man Bat, or something like. There's like it's ridiculous. Like, so yeah, so this show just doesn't really care about grounding itself in any type of reality or lore.
but can I
So
tell you
like,
something? I love the Batman. I
I was
think
gonna say, I'm actually really enjoying kind of this whole like no, this is like Batman like back in the 1950s where like bad guys just show up and he just beats them up. Like we don't have to worry about like getting like background story on the villain, this master plan that they may have. Like no, here's 25 minutes of a creature showing up and Batman just taking it down. And like
definite freak of the week stuff, which is great
yeah,
because
yeah.
I can't imagine you're very far into it, right?
No. I'm only about 5 or 6 episodes into the first season.
So
So
that
like
first season is so freak of the week because that's really
yeah.
what superhero fiction had become because of things like Smallville. Like we were very used to a villain is introduced in this episode, Batman fights and Batman triumphs, but then something's going to happen with the Batman where
Okay.
it starts to become hyper serialized, and that is when the show really starts to shine.
Well, I'm excited because one of the big things about the show that is definitely worth watching is the aesthetic, the design in it, like for it is like it's the same group that I correct me if I'm wrong on this. It's the same group that did like Jackie Chan Adventures and stuff like that, right? Like it's that animation group.
I would
So
imagine
it's
so because it was on WB, and I know
yeah,
that all of that was outsourced to the same animation company.
yeah.
I,
So it's
I
got that look to it with like the like the thicker lines and the rough edges and like nobody really has like a round face. Everybody's got like a crooked nose and things like that. Like there's a look to it that's really weird. But then on top of that, the villains are all super unique to this show. Like the way that they design the villains on this show is unlike anything else I've ever seen in the universe in the Batman stories. Like Joker has this weird like multicolored straitjacket where his sleeves are longer than his arms, so it gives this really weird effect where like every time he dances around, his sleeves fly into the air. Also, his hair is all dreadlocks in this one. Like,
and
so
he
like
wears
there's like
no shoes with the grossest toenails.
yeah. So they make him kind of like animalistic in a weird way. He's not like this intelligent, devious thing. He's literally just this creature this anarchic creature. Yeah. So like the style of the show is really the thing that has me going back to it episode after episode, but I'm glad to hear that it does pick up at some point and actually start to have its own lore.
Well, let me tell you why
Because
I got into the Batman.
okay,
It was 2006. It had to have been 2006 because Jamie, Joe, and Pat were living together. And we entered a 24-hour film festival. So we had to be like set for that. Now I was like going to be up and writing the script. That was my whole thing. Pat was directing. It was a whole big story. But I remember that Saturday, I was not a fan of the Batman at all. But like it was like wait time. Like Jamie and Joe were out trying to get props and everything, and Pat and I were working through the script, and we had finished it. So we just needed our other two people before we could continue at all. And on Kids WB was an episode of the Batman, and in it, Firefly, who one of my favorite characters, probably because he was the first boss in the Batman NES game. Firefly was in it, so I'm like, holy shit, Firefly! I love him. He's just such a great villain. And within the like, clearly an established character, had a history with Batman. So I'm like, oh wow, so there is some lore to this because it always felt like it was Freak of the Week, from what I heard from people. And then within that episode, he turned into Phosphorus, who is another favorite of the Batman's rogue gallery. And I'm like, what a perfect thing to do for this era of cartoons. Where,
yeah,
like,
to have those two kind of third tier villains actually have a connection like that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was just the coolest thing. And I'm like, I got to go back and watch this show because that was intelligent design. Also, Batman versus Dracula, which I don't think is on Netflix, but track it down because Batman fights literal Dracula. And it is amazing.
And it is technically part of this universe, right? Like, it's not like a weird
Dude,
one-off.
Not only is it part of the universe, exists within continuity. Like, they reference the time that Dracula came to fucking Gotham and stirred shit up.
That's awesome. Yeah, like, I'm really enjoying that. And I think that what you're talking about only could come from a show that completely wanted to ignore, like, the lore that already existed and or care about anything, like, fans want, right? Because it definitely is a show that doesn't care about like old school fans. It just doesn't.
No, and
I mean,
not at
like,
all. Oh God, some of the stuff they do. Like, I don't want to ruin stuff for you, but like some of the stuff that happens with even in the first season. Oh,
yeah.
I'm excited that you're watching the Batman.
Yeah, yeah. So
That's
that's what I've been doing is I've been kind of checking that out, you know. And it's a good thing for me to like I said, I'm not totally invested in it yet, so it's not eating up all of my time. I only watch like an episode or two a day, and they're kind of spread out, you know. So like whenever I've got 20 minutes, I'll sit down and watch an episode, maybe while I'm eating lunch, and like it's the perfect show for that right now. But I am glad to hear that it actually picks up at some point because it feels like a show that if I wanted to, I could get invested in at some point. And I've got a summer coming up, so that'll be good.
5 beautiful seasons. And before I go into what I did over the weekend, I would like to say another show that reminds me a lot of the Batman: Spectacular, Spectacular, Spectacular Spider-Man.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
I say that
is
because
that is
that's
also
the
available
theme
on
song.
Netflix, right?
Is it? I don't know if it's on Netflix. If it is, stop the fucking presses. Go watch Spectacular Spider-Man on Netflix right now. I had to track down a DVD release. Now, they did the first season in a nice little package, but the second season, they only released as 8 different volumes.
Volumes. Oh man. Oh,
But let me
God.
tell you, I was at a Toys R Us and they had like a huge DVD sale. I ended up picking the whole series up, and I mean, I watched that. That was required viewing for me. Saturday mornings, I made sure I was sitting down, ready to watch Spectacular Spider-Man. That was
Awesome.
2009 for me. And it's that similar thing where it's like all of these characters exist, but guess what? I don't give a fuck what you think about Spider-Man.
Yeah.
This is our story, and this is what we're doing. Plus, bonus, hasn't come up a lot on the Stay Report. I'm a huge fan of gargoyles.
The animated series.
The architecture from Baroque times. that
Hey
you
man,
sometimes see my
you could be into that. This is the Say Report. We talk about everything we love. No, but I also
the
Keith
series,
David, right? Yeah,
Keith David as Goliath. I mean, basically all of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Riker is Xanatos.
Oh man, I forgot entirely about the casting on that show.
Yeah,
But
it's
yeah, I
awesome.
remember. I remember the first few episodes, all like they used to do with all those Disney ones, are a movie, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I remember the movie pretty distinctly. I don't know if I watched much of the show afterwards though, so I'll have to get back into that one as well.
That show, but it's the same creator who did Spectacular Spider-Man. So it is that same, like, I really care about the world. Like, it is not a question where, like, the Batman, they're like, we're just doing a fun one-off Batman show. If it exists, it doesn't exist. Really, they thought that, I'm fairly certain they felt like it wasn't going to continue because they had been commissioned to do that show as Batman Begins was, like, announced. And a lot of times, I mean, Marvel is more the culprits for this than DC ever was. But if a movie came out and there was a show running concurrently, they would end that series to do something that hewed more in line with the movie that just came out.
Yeah.
So I can 100% imagine that the Batman creators were like, we're going to have 13 episodes, let's just one off and have fun. And then somehow they're like, no, Batman is huge right now. You have to keep doing this show.
Yeah, that's actually pretty obvious because the first, like I said, I've only watched the first 5 or 6 episodes, and the villains he's going against are the Penguin, the Joker, Mr. Free. Like, he's not going against his, like, lower level guys like you saw in the animated series for, you know, like, this is definitely them trying to hit, like, the highlights in this first half of the season. So it seems exactly like you're saying, like, they didn't know if they were going to get to go for too long, so they're just trying to do, like, best of right now.
And that's exactly it. And luckily, like, they're like, no, people are loving what you're doing. Batman is huge right now. You need to continue. And that's when it started to become more serialized. Where with Spectacular Spider-Man, like from minute one, he's like, no, I have a story to tell. And like a guy that you run into in the first episode, he's gonna be big fucking deal. Episode 6. That's a promise. Oh, it's so good. I shouldn't have brought up Spectacular Spider-Man. It's fantastic. But now, what I did with my weekend, as you looked back to the past with the Batman, I looked back to the past with Yooka-Laylee. Have you seen this? Have you heard about this? No.
Have I heard about it? Yeah. Well, for those of us that haven't, give everybody a little rundown.
So basically, when 3D gaming started in 1996, circa, what they made in these 3D environments were collectathons, where you would be tasked to collect everything. Super Mario 64, there's 120 stars to collect, but also in each level, there's 100 coins to collect in order to get a star. Then you have Banjo-Kazooie, which is like...
I was going to say, Rare kind of picked this up and ran with it.
Yeah, so
right?
they picked it up, and they did Banjo-Kazooie, which would be the evolutionary form of Mario 64, where, you know, there's 999 music notes within the game for you to collect. and 100 puzzle pieces that we called jiggies because it's like jigsaw puzzle pieces.
Yeah,
So
and and like then depending on how much of that stuff you collect, you can get different abilities, different endings. Also, like you're rewarded for collecting all of this
yeah,
stuff.
the more you
Yeah.
find, the more you're given back. And then what killed the collectathon genre, ironically enough, is the next evolutionary step after Banjo-Kazooie, and that is Donkey Kong 64, which
Which
had
was amazing.
201 bananas to pick up. Everybody had thousands. It was ridiculous. The amount of
It
things
was
that you had
amazing.
to. You know what? I would
I'm gonna
believe
keep
it was
saying it.
amazing, and
It
I
was
want to
amazing.
believe it. I bought an N64 from Walmart for $50 that included Donkey Kong 64 because it was like clearance. Like it
Yeah.
was like hidden in the bottom of a shelf, and I'm like, I want that, please. How much is it?
So it was the yellow one.
No, it was green. It was the
Oh, it was
jungle green.
green, junk green. Yeah, yeah.
And I was in a drama class my senior year of high school, and we had to demonstrate how to do something. So I was going to show how to set up a video game console and like properly calibrate it and everything, stolen from my locker. So I never finished Donkey Kong 64.
Oh no.
So it's
Okay.
like this gap
Here's
in
the
my
thing.
gaming history.
Donkey Kong 64 is definitely that thing that took it too far, but now like it's one of those ones that everybody kind of goes back to and is just like, all right, this wasn't so bad. It was just it. You're right. It is a ton of stuff in that game because you have 5 different characters that have to all do their own thing. So basically, it was like 5 of those games rolled into one. It was nuts, and that might be part of the reason why I personally enjoyed it so much because that might be the first game that I sunk 60 or more hours into. Like before that, like I had even played Zelda games and always got to the point where all I did was mainline. That is the first game where I collected everything. Donkey Kong 64. So like I could totally see where you're coming from on that being the killer of that genre, but for me, it hit at just the right time where like it was kind of like a really good last hurrah.
But also, I feel like that was partially the killer of that genre. Now, granted, again, I have not put as much time in it as you have, but the graphics weren't super great. Like it ran
No,
a little
not at all.
choppy. And for coming out after Banjo-Kazooie, that was kind of odd. And also, it reused a lot of assets. Like, I know that the Army Armadillo that you fight in the first level is, like, one of the later stages bosses. Ditto for the Dragon Baby that you fight in the second level. Now,
Yeah, they like try to narratively explain why that sort of stuff happens, but you're not wrong. It is basically like repeat boss battles, and it's the idea that like the boss battles were all 3 hits and you're done type of deals, right? Like, or there might have been 2 stages to them, and they never evolved past that, which is not. I mean, like we expect more than that now, right?
not only do we expect more from that now, we kind of expected more from it then. Because if you look at Donkey Kong Country, right, really what invigorated and created the entire Donkey Kong genre. Yeah, there was some boss reuse and everything like that. Like you fought Necky Jr. and then Necky Sr. and you fought the 2 Beaver guys, right? Like there were only really 5 distinct bosses through
Yeah.
through 7 levels.
Right,
But
right.
that's completely fine because like it's the first time they do that. And then Diddy's Conquest comes along and every boss is unique. And not
Yes.
only is every boss unique, but every unique boss has a unique way to fight them.
Yeah, and
Like-
unique environments that you have to
Yeah.
deal with, and yeah,
It's not just jump on their head or something like that.
right.
And even then, Donkey Kong Country 2, I'm remembering now, you refight the first boss's ghost in the 5th level. But like it
Yeah.
kind of makes sense because it's a haunted level. And
Plus, what ends up happening is the entire fight changes. You're fighting the same guy, but you're not fighting in the same way.
Right. It's a chase level and it's lots of fun. And also the methodology for beating him is completely different.
Right.
So like they did a good job with it. And then you get to Dixie's Double Trouble, the 3rd one in the Donkey Kong Country trilogy, and that one was like every single boss has a unique way to beat them. Every single boss is unique. Enjoy this because
Yeah.
this is the culmination. Like I remember Rare was like, "We're so proud because all of our boss battles are new and different and unique." So then you get to Donkey Kong 64, and all of the boss battles are kind of samey.
Yeah.
And like what it doesn't feel like the difficulty or the challenge comes from the boss. It also kind of feels like you're fighting against the controls a lot. I say that for the boss of the third level, the like
Yeah,
hopping guy.
well,
Like,
I mean, like plain and simple, it didn't have anything really Donkey Kongy about it except for the characters. Because even the environments that you're in and stuff like that, like at some point you're like in an abandoned toy factory and like things that Donkey Kong never had anything to do with Donkey Kong.
well,
So
you
like
go to
the battles
factories a
aren't the
lot in
same.
Donkey Kong. That
Well, you go
bad
to
example,
you go
please.
to
But
like no. You go to like factories and you go to like and you go to mines and stuff like that. But what you don't go to is like haunted toy stores, which is what that one is. And like, you know what I mean? There aren't Jack in the Boxes bouncing around at you and things like that.
that's true. That's more Chippendale Rescue Rangers. But but you're right. Like that's you bring up a totally great point with that, and that's the thing. But so Yooka-Laylee is what we're talking about. So Yooka-Laylee is a collectathon, and it's like trying to be that, and it was kickstarted. So like, yay for Kickstarter and stuff like that. And really, I just want to get done with it now. Like, it's not even fun anymore. It feels like work, but I know I can beat it. I know that I can collect everything. So
Yeah.
I'm playing it the worst possible way. Like, right now, what I spent my whole weekend doing, I haven't fought a single boss yet, and apparently there are 6 bosses to fight. But what I've done is just try to mainline the opening up all of the worlds, because when you
Okay.
open up the worlds, you get new abilities. Like, it's not that in the
Which you can
worlds you buy the new abilities. It's literally you open up a world and you find Trouser, the snake who sells you like abilities and stuff, and he's like, "Oh, for opening that world, here's this power." And like the powers he gives you is like, here's how you traverse underwater. So like I'm in the first level and I'm like, there's something down there, but I can't go down there. I can't hold my breath long enough. So
Yeah.
now I have that, and I'm like, well, now I'm just gonna try to unlock all of those so that I can just go to each level one time and hopefully get everything.
Because you don't want to be going back. It's not worth going back to those worlds later on.
It's not
Like,
like I don't want to do that. Like the
Yeah,
fact
yeah.
that I know that the ones that, especially, I just got Flight. You unlock the 4th level, you find Trouser, and he gives you the ability to fly. There goes all platforming challenge in those first levels. And like, yes,
Excellent.
maybe I'm hindering myself a little bit, but also it's like, I to earn that, all I needed to do was collect like 20 pages. That's the jiggies of that game.
Yeah.
And it's just like, and the game feels like it's fighting against me all the time. Like, I'll admit it. Like, it's fun to be doing a collectathon again. It's just, do you remember the N64 era? You'd have these rare games, and they were supposed to come out on a certain date, and then it would inevitably get delayed.
Exactly.
And
yeah.
you'd get mad about it. You're like, no, I wanted to play Jet Force Gemini today. I don't want to wait 6 months.
Right.
I understand why they got delayed, because it was probably to fix things like a camera that doesn't move and doesn't go through things and like gets stuck on posts. And
Yeah,
it was
yeah.
probably to like make sure that the controls are tight and they're not flighty and you understand where you're going to land.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah,
I understand
fine-tuning,
that.
right?
Yeah. QA, quality assurance, which I mean has completely gone out the window in modern video gaming. I
Well,
don't
because
think
we can download patches now, so why the fuck do we need QA when the
So
world
let's-
can become your QA?
There you go. And again, like that's one of the reasons why I feel like Shovel Knight is such a good game, because they test the shit out of their games before they release the updates. Also, you have Shovel Knight, right?
I do.
Okay, tomorrow, buddy, Spectre of
Oh.
Torment comes out. So
Yes,
be ready
excellent.
for that, because it is awesome. Played it
Oh,
on my
man.
Switch, played it on Steam. Very excited to play it on the PS4.
Cool.
And you should be excited too.
Well, and I was going to say that this is making me think a lot of actually going back to the early days of the Say Report, Shantae. You know, like there's a lot of that collectible drive to those games as well. And I have to say that like I think I said this then and I'll say it now. I think that they timed it out perfectly. Like there's just enough going on with the collectibles. There's just enough going on with the size of the world in that first Shantae game, or second Shantae game technically. That I
Or
that
fourth Shantae game, if we're being really into it.
that felt really tight and really well put together, right? Like really, and so it's a shame that they couldn't do something like this with Yooka-Laylee, because as we've pointed out, like they've gotten things like this right in the past. Like the industry knows what they're doing with these things. So I don't know what happened with Yooka-Laylee. I mean, do you think that it's too much fan service, maybe, or?
But I mean, like,
This is a conversation we kind of had last week, but I mean, like, do you feel like they were trying too hard to make one of these games that they kind of forgot to correct the things that we've gotten better at since then? Like, for instance, camera control and things like that?
I am so cynical that I don't think that that's the plan. I don't think it was let's not fix this. I feel like the glitch is a feature. I feel like they're like, oh man, remember how shitty the camera was in Sonic Adventure? That's how shitty our camera is right now. Like we
So
could
they like
tweak
went
it
out
and
of
we
their
could
way
fix
to
it, but
use
like,
that type of coding, and oh god, oh.
and I mean, like, and that's awful. Like it's lazy, but like it
can't
also at the
possibly
same
be.
time, like that's what really makes it feel nostalgic. Like
Yeah.
there are all these meta moments where they like shout out things that are like supposed to be like, hey, remember? I remember, but it's not like that. You don't remember at those moments. You remember where like you take a jump and you're 100% certain that you're gonna land on the platform and you
Right.
fall to your death. And I'm
Oh.
like, man, I remember when I did that in Mario? I thought it was just because I was 9 at the time.
Nope. Turns out it was just really bad coding and really, that sort of
Like
stuff.
turns out the fact that it was 1996 and they were trying to put us into a 3-dimensional world.
That is really sad, man. That's
I mean,
a shame.
But here's the thing: I'm going to keep playing it, and hopefully it gets better. But here's the one thing: everybody who's talked about it, right? This is our Yooka-Laylee review, I guess. Everybody talks about these Dr. Quack quizzes that are supposed to evoke like Grunty's. I don't remember the name of it, but like Grunty gives you that board game that you need to play through before you fight her.
Right, and you have to remember a bunch of stuff about the game previously.
Right. So I'm okay with that. That kind of stuff, that never bothered me because, like, I'm always looking past the picture. Like, I saw The Graduate last night at the TCM, like, anniversary screening, 50th anniversary of The Graduate. And on the way home, because my mother came out with me, we tested each other on, like, stupid little background details.
Nice.
Like, what day is the show going to be at the auditorium? Oh, July 22nd. Like, that was how deep we were going.
Well, and like to be fair, the stuff that went on with the grunty stuff in Banjo-Kazooie, like, I mean, at the time it was like a new weird thing that they could do in the game, but like the questions, because it was such a weird new thing, they didn't push that hard with the questions. The questions were like, how many levels were underwater? And it was like, well, just one was underwater. Like, you know what I mean?
There were two.
Well,
Clanker's
but I mean,
Cavern and the Oil Bay.
But that's what I mean is like it was never questions that were like really, if you weren't paying attention you were screwed. Also, the punishment for not getting the questions right, I'm pretty sure were just start back at the beginning, but the questions are exactly the same. So like by the time you got to it, next time you were like, all right, well last time I picked this answer and that wasn't right, so it must be that answer. You know what I mean? Like like there was a margin of error on that was very forgiving.
Yeah. It's forgiving. You have 3 lives in these quizzes, and if you answer the questions right, you get to move forward 2 spaces. If you answer them right quickly, like within 3 seconds. So like they can fly by. But the thing that really gets to me, and it gets to me as someone who's played video games for most of my life, this is the reason it sticks in my craw, is the duck is trying to be meta, so he's saying stuff like, oh, you got that wrong. There are player guides available. He doesn't talk like that. That's how he sounded in my head. He talks like all Banjo-Kazooie characters, like whack, 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 whack.
Oh my god.
So like he says that, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of funny, right? Like that's sort of like a
that
a
is
funny
straight
thing.
out of that
like
is Grunty straight out of Banjo-Kazooie though. Like that is beat for beat. Like she would even taunt you like that when you were playing those older games.
Right, it's totally Punch Out, join the Nintendo fan club. Like it's that kind of meta humor that's like funny. But then the questions are things like, how many quills have you collected so far? So it's arbitrary bullshit based upon how I've played the game. No player guide exists that's going to give me those answers.
No.
So,
that's I mean, I guess like on the one hand, like that's crazy because it means that they kind of beat that system.
Exactly.
Because one of the things I was going to say about the grunty stuff nowadays is you could just look that shit up online. I mean, if you really wanted to, you could sit there with your phone in one hand and play the game. I cannot believe it. Oh no.
Right? Like, that's the thing. And, like, he says that, and he's like, are you looking at your cell phone? That exact thing happens when you get a question right. But, Sejin, no!
No, because the stuff you're asking me has no basis in this in outside of my own game.
Dude, and it asked me how many quills I had, and it was like 193, 207, or 250. So I'm like, I know I'm like around the 200 mark, but I don't think I've gotten to 250. Plus, that seems like a really round number. So I picked 207. It was my last life, sent me back to the beginning. I check, I was at exactly 250 quills. And I'm just like, fuck you, game. Like, really? Like, I'm that good that the one answer that looks like it's bullshit is the correct answer? I don't know. Like, I guess I should be happy that something can make me this upset, but then, like, specifically when the jokes that you're making are incendiary and not funny. Like,
Yeah.
it would be funny if there was out there for real a Yooka-Laylee player's guide, right? And it's that sort of cross-promotion and ha-ha-ha funny. Or, like, he talks about Yukapedia, which isn't even a real website, but, like, take the time to register that and have the stuff on there, right?
Right. What is that? That's an intern. That's an intern's lunch. That's what you have them do. Like, just sit there and just register that domain and just do something stupid on it.
If said a website and you went to that website, it was a website. Same with How I Met Your Mother. They didn't arbitrarily throw shit out there. So that's it. And the other frustrating thing about Yooka-Laylee, and this is, we'll move past it after this, is when it's loading, it's got crazy long load times. Like, you want to know crazy long load time? I went to download the Disney Afternoon Collection, which I would also like to talk about, if you'll allow me. And I'm like, oh, while this is downloading, because it's going to be like a 40-minute download, I'll play some Yooka-Laylee. I started Yooka-Laylee. Before I got to any gameplay in Yooka-Laylee, Disney Afternoon Collection had finished downloading.
Oh, man. That is... That's really not good nowadays. I mean, like once it's loaded, though, like, is it pretty much all loaded? Like you don't have any more load times for the rest of the time?
No, not really. No. Like, that's the thing.
No.
I'm sitting there and I'm like, well, I got it loaded. Now I got to play Yooka-Laylee, right? And then I go through a door, another loading screen. I'm like, no, fuck this. I'm not doing it. And then to make matters worse, what it says on the load screen, right? It's like little pithy little comments, like they do in load screens, right? One of them is, if this were on a cartridge, it would have loaded by now. Fuck you, Yooka-Laylee.
Oh my god, that was like a poke in the eye. What is that joke? Like, who is the butt of that joke?
Me for you?
Essentially.
What?
Yeah. Well, this is what you get, asshole. You wanted a digital game.
And, like, here's the question that I have, right? Yooka-Laylee is going to come out on Nintendo Switch, right? Like, Dale has a friend who is specifically waiting for the Switch download because he feels like it will only feel right to play it on the Switch because it's like an N64 like successor.
Okay. All right.
And that's going to be on cartridges. So is it still going to say that?
I think maybe that'll be buried in there and it'll just never get to it because the
load times are so quick.
Oh my god. But no, let's talk about a video game that you enjoyed then, because I know for a fact that you enjoyed the Disney.
Oh, the Disney Afternoon Collection.
Yeah. So let's talk about that.
It. So good.
I mean, why wouldn't you? For anybody that's not aware, it's is it all of the NES classic Disney games?
It is all of the NES Disney Afternoon related games.
Okay,
so it's
that would
six
be
titles. So you got DuckTales, DuckTales 2, Tailspin, Darkwing Duck, Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, and Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers 2.
Okay, cool. And at the time, they were pretty well received at games, right? Like, I mean, like, for fans at least, right?
I feel like fans really enjoyed them. I know that I love them. DuckTales is one of those games that everybody knows.
Right.
And I was surprised, like, as an adult, when I started hanging out with other people who, like, played video games as much as I had. Shout out Mark Daniels. You heard him at the end of last week's podcast. He loved DuckTales so much that in his video game song cover band, he did the Moon theme song. And I'm like, who knows that this is the Moon theme song from DuckTales? Apparently a lot of people. Like, that game touched people. Where, like, I didn't even really like DuckTales. I'll be honest, right? I'll make myself a pariah. I didn't really like that game.
Just for reference, DuckTales is the one that they remastered a few years ago, right? That is the DuckTales that they remastered?
It's that, so.
Yeah, and so, in fact, I've actually played through this game myself and have to say that, like, I do really enjoy it. Like, I'm not a big NES Classic guy because I never had access to one. I was a Super Nintendo house, eventually when they came out. So before that, I didn't have much experience with the NES. So when DuckTales Remastered came around, was it last year?
DuckTales Remastered came out in, like, 2012, 2013.
Okay, so a few years ago.
Yeah.
When it came around, like, I gave it a shot. It came out on a Steam sale or something like that, like wicked cheap, and so I picked it up and fell in love with it real quick. So, like, I could see why that one was.
Can I tell you why I fell in love with the remastered version of DuckTales?
Why?
Full theme song, full theme song, which, like, you never hear, but, like, Goat Beat Ducks It Never Fails. That's for certain. Love it. Greatest lyric ever.
Yeah, man.
Because the
So
worst
yeah,
of
I
messes
fell in love with it
become
myself.
successes. Yeah. But that's a game that as a kid, like I found it just too difficult. I don't know
Mhm.
why. Like now I can breeze right through it. But the one that really hooked me is Chippendale Rescue Rangers. Because I had it as a kid, and funny anecdote, maybe. I had this across the street neighbor. Her name was Charlotte. We called her Charlie. She was a little
Okay,
bit older than me, but she was my NES buddy growing up.
nice.
And I remember when we were playing through Chippendale Rescue Rangers one Friday night, and the board is very like Super Mario Brothers 3 esque, where like you move along to levels. And we got to the final level on that board, which is G. And after you do that, you fly into space and come down, and there's a second board through to J. And I remember her saying, "Well, if you can beat this game, you must be a rocket scientist." Now, she assumed that it would go all the way to Z. It doesn't. It ends at J. There's only 10 levels. But I remember, like, years later, after I had moved away from living across from Charlotte, beating the game and being like, I'm a rocket scientist.
Yeah. I mean, but that was the great thing about NES. The like, even though I didn't have one, like everybody was always. I mean, they made a movie about everybody competing around this shit. The Wiz is one of my favorite movies. Well, not The
It's
Wiz.
called The Wizard.
The Wizard.
Very different
Very different
films.
movie. The Wiz is. I mean, The Wizard is full of a bunch of white people. That's how I know the difference.
And Christian Slater's there.
But the Wizard, like that mentality that's in the Wizard of like the idea of a bunch of kids getting around to like compete with one another, like that is the thing that is born out of the NES for me, is like that whole
Yeah.
like so the idea that like you're beating this game and the first thought in your head is this girl that thought it was impossible all those years ago, that makes total sense to me. Yeah.
And like
So they released this six pack. When did they release this?
it came out last Tuesday, so the 18th of April.
And
And
you played
I've
through.
I've only played through and beaten Chippendale Rescue Rangers, but I beat the boss rush mode because it's the regular game, a time trial mode, and a boss rush mode. I beat all the boss rush modes because like I wanted to see what they were. And like prior to this, I've beaten Chippendale, DuckTales, Tailspin, and Darkwing Duck. Like I've beaten 4 of the game. Oh, I've even beaten DuckTales 2. The only game I haven't finished is Chippendale Rescue Rangers 2. I've never completed it. But that game goes for like $500 on the regular Nintendo. So to plop down $20 to finally get to beat that game on a console, that was worth it for me, price of admission. But then I mentioned time trial. Here's a thing that was on my resume for a very long time in my special skills section. Can
Yeah.
beat Chippendale on NES in 17 minutes. Like I like it's fun. It's an icebreaker, and like a lot of the times in interviews, people would go to that and be like, "What does this mean?" And I'd be like, but it's because I taught me learning, and I had to train myself to get to that level. I'm a quick learner, but as I do things better, I actually get better. I don't hit a wall. So time trial, Chippendale Rescue Rangers had to do it. Like I'm like, this is where I need to go. This is where I belong.
Right. How
So
did that go for you?
Well, the first time I beat it, I wound up at like number 7 on the worldwide leaderboard. And I'm
Awesome.
like, I can do better. And I beat my 17-minute time. I did it at 16:34. But I'm like, I can do better than that. And I did it the second time. I did it in 14 minutes and 4 seconds. So for a time, I was number 2 on the Chippendale Rescue Rangers leaderboard to a guy who did it in 13 minutes and 56 seconds. So
Man.
like that felt like really cool for a moment. Now I'm sure that's done because like I checked again, like the fastest time is 11 minutes right now. So like
You might
good
still be in
for
that
you
top
guys.
10.
Well, I mean, last time I checked, I had knocked down to 7th of
Okay.
the top 10, which I'm like, I already started here, but so whatever. But I haven't checked again because I've been playing Yooka-Laylee because I want to get that done. I want to finish up Yooka-Laylee. Very excited for Mario Kart Deluxe 8 that's coming out. Like I'm super excited for that game.
So, if I have Mario Kart 8, speaking of that really quick, this is just a
No,
off-topic
it's fine.
question.
This is the video game episode because apparently we're bursting at the seams to talk about video games.
So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, that's another thing coming out soon for the Switch. What's the deluxe side of that? Because I have Mario Kart and up till now all of the DLC available. So should I bother with Mario Kart Deluxe?
Oh, well, you don't have a Switch, right?
Well, no. Okay,
So you
let's
would
start
need
there.
to have a Switch. It doesn't. It's
Mhm.
not like
It is only
a
coming out on the
release
Switch,
on the
right.
Wii U as well.
Right.
If you've already purchased the DLC, really there's nothing else to bring to the table for you. The things that would appeal to you are the fact that there are 2 new racers. The Squidlings from Splatoon are there. as
Oh,
characters.
that's awesome.
Oh no, there's 3 others as well. King Boo is now a character. Dry Bones is now a character, and there's one other character I can't remember who it is right now.
Oh shoot, was Dry Bones not? Oh no, Dry Bowser.
Oh, Bowser Jr.
Okay,
So
cool.
those 3 are coming in, which is nice because they were in Mario Kart 7, and
Yeah.
they're part of the game, so it's nice to have them back. Also, there's a new battle mode that's actually going to be more like the battle mode from like N64 or Double
Oh,
Dash.
thank God! Because for anybody that doesn't know, the battle mode on Mario Kart 8 sucked. It was awful. They just put you on this they basically would take
It's just
a
tracks,
track,
right?
They would take a track and then but what they would do is they would have to alter them in some way to make them essentially infinite loops in either direction, so not every track works, right? And so they'd have to take the tracks that almost worked and then alter those to work, and then on top of that you just have to chase people down and it becomes a game of tag, and that's it. And so there was no skill to it. There was no fun. There was nothing exciting about seeing those worlds in any way. And it just basically became, if you had 2 racers that were pretty much matched and they start you on either side of the world, if you both are going in the same direction, guess what happens? You never catch up with each other.
No.
And the second that you see the other person turning around, the smartest thing to do is for you to turn around so that they can't get to you and do it. You know what I mean? So it just becomes this infinite loop of nonsense in a way that Mario Kart is not. It was just no fun because that's not what Mario Kart is, you know.
And people said the chase with Charlie Sheen would never have a video game adaptation.
Oh man, is that when you're Waluigi rolling around?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I can get us off of video games for a bit if you'd like.
No. I mean, we can, but it's but that's it. So I went real deep and hard onto the Disney Afternoon collection, and I want to finish Yooka-Laylee because I feel like I'm right there at the end, and then I'm going to be doing a bunch of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe.
Cool.
And honestly, this is the one that says, and it's going to be like this for every game that comes out for the Switch. This is the reason to get a Switch.
Yeah, I have yet to feel that way about anything in particular. The one that I'm actually waiting on is Splatoon 2. That might be the thing that becomes the system seller for me. We'll see. I don't know. I haven't seen a game yet that's made me feel like I also want to put in for the price of the Switch. You know.
I get that. I completely understand that.
Yeah.
But I had gotten rid of my Wii U last year, so I'm like, yeah, you know what, Zelda. Yeah, I'll do it. Why not?
Yeah. All right, man.
Get us off of video games, Sejan.
Okay, ready to take a hard right? All right. Here's the thing. Here's one of the other things I've been doing to kill some time around here lately. I've decided to dive back into some Stephen King novels. I told you it was a hard right, man.
Really? I think my transmission just leapt out of my car as I tried to downshift.
Yeah, no, I've been spending some time this week getting back into some stuff. Specifically, okay, so I grew up in a house that loved Stephen King. I mean, I feel like kind of our generation, every house kind of had 1 or 2 of his books around, right? At least, if not huge collections like my family did. Stephen King was just kind of a fact of life. If you grew up in the late 80s throughout the 90s, you were guaranteed to at least try it once, right?
Happy to interject that did not enter into my house at all.
You at Dean Koontz house?
Yeah. We're a Sports Illustrated house. Thank you very much. My first Sports Illustrated. My first Stephen King novel was my aunt lent it to me because she's like, "What do you mean you don't know Stephen King?" And I'm like, "I don't know."
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so Stephen King was just kind of a big thing in my house growing up. I read a bunch of the books growing up. So I've got a ton lying around here. The best one that I personally have ever read, my number 1 Stephen King book, is definitely the writer's edition of The Stand that he put out. So it's 1,000 and some odd pages long, and it's one of his I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's his opus. I know a lot of people look at The Dark Tower as kind of the best thing that he's ever written as a whole, but the thing for me is The Dark Tower didn't click for me until 3 or 4 books in. That was when I was okay, now I can't stop reading. The Stand in one book, basically I couldn't put it down after the first 100 pages or so. So I love that book, and I have actually read through that edition twice in my life. It is a fucking beast. Like I said, it's over 1,000 pages, and being the writer's edition, like all director's editions, there are definitely pieces of it where I'm just like, I see why this was probably cut for the official release, right? But there's something about it that I just love. That like there's some character development and some characters that just show up that actually got completely cut from the final edition that I just love. They're just gross, just humans. So I've been thinking about getting back into Stephen King again, but specifically not wanting to read The Stand because of the monster that it is. Part of this comes from the stuff that's been coming out about it lately. The new release of it being this year. Do you know if they're still doing it as a 2-movie release or is it just one now?
I feel like they're only going to do it as one movie.
Yeah, they were talking for a while as doing a 2-movie split, but now I too feel like I've heard that they're whittling it down to just probably one 3-hour long film.
Which would be fine with me. Like I don't even have to know going in. If your movie is good and engages me, I'll stay involved in it. Like, did you see Silence? Can I a little detour? Did you see the movie Silence?
I did not see Silence. No.
So that movie, Scorsese's big
year.
one from last year.
That like no theater picked up, which is why I didn't see it.
Dude, it was at Warwick for like a week, and we saw Singing in the Rain, and then rushed over to see that. That movie is like 2 hours and 52 minutes long when all is said and done. It felt like a blink to me because I was just so engaged in it.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it is that kind of movie where like if you're in it, you're in it.
Yeah, and I have to say that as somebody that has read that book from start to finish 3 or 4 times and seen the original made for TV movie that they put out in the early 90s, was it? Well, with like little Seth Green in it and stuff like that.
It was 27 years ago or something like that because the whole thing is he comes back every 27 years and this is the 27th year.
So like as somebody that is like actually way deep into that story because I really actually do love it as a story as well. I'm not upset about it not being 2 movies. Like I don't need it to be 2-hour long films. Like it can be a good 3-hour cut. There's a lot of stuff that happens in that story.
Because that's the worst thing.
Yeah.
Because every time like just as the movie's starting to get good, credits, and then I'm like, no, now what did you do to me?
But here's the big secret about Stephen King that honestly, like, I feel like every Stephen King fan has to be able to admit is that sometimes, the majority of the time, he takes something too far. He takes his point too far. And I think that part of that is like it is a really good example of this. If it had been 4 hours, I feel like that would have been exactly what Stephen King wanted, and that would have been too much for me, right? Stephen King always, when King writes, he always takes a really kind of bland idea, then makes it interesting, and then takes it too far. That's the evolution of every King novel. So, like for instance, Dreamcatcher is actually one of my weird underdog favorites of his because even he hates that book. But I actually kind of really enjoy it because of how goofy and B-movie-ish it is. And so what it is it's an alien invasion. So that's kind of like the bland, sci-fi topic, alien invasion, but he takes it to this really interesting place wherein what if there was a second invasion that had come actually years earlier planning to help us prevent it? And that's like this really interesting concept that happens throughout Dreamcatcher is this realization that there have been these people actually put in place to stop this alien invasion from another alien invasion earlier that saw this one coming, right? And it becomes this whole like weird like counter terrorism move essentially by these things, and that's like, and then the army gets involved, and it becomes this really weird representation of that. But then, like all Stephen King books, it takes it too far, and it gets to this weird place where at the end, you have the mystical disabled person that shows up in every Stephen King story, like showing up and smothering the other alien with a pillow, and like you're just like, this is the weirdest ending for this thing ever, and it ends in not really a fight, but like just kind of like peters out, and like he takes it too long, it just goes way too long, and you're just like, if you had ended this 50 pages ago with like some big blowout, that would have been a better ending for this. And like that's the same thing I feel like with it is there's so much stuff that's in there that's like, for me, the point of it is this idea of there's this kind of Lovecraftian god, right, that can only be defeated by the power of love, which is kind of a dopey, tropey idea, right? Like that's YA monster nonsense, right? Yes. But then he takes it to this really interesting place by talking about, so what if you have these teenagers that are basically entering prepubescent teens that are kind of entering puberty and kind of are starting to like get a new understanding of what love is. And so like the whole thing is tied to them having to be kids on the edge. They're kids so they can see it. That's the point, is adults kind of can't comprehend the concept of it. So they're kids so they can still see it, but they're starting to have this understanding of love that is much more mature and adult. So they put them right on the edge and puts them perfectly in place to actually take this thing out. So that's a really interesting concept. But then he takes it way too friggin' far, and they end up having an orgy in the sewer at some point. And you're just like, all right, like take a breath. Like
All I can think of as you talk about this is like where comedy, like something is funny and then it gets not funny, but then it wraps back around to funny again. It feels like Stephen King, something is bland, and then gradually it's not bland before he wraps it back into bland again.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of my biggest critiques of King is like his best novels are the ones where he can get through that wall and it doesn't come back to it. So like The Shining is a really good example of that. And like I said, like I love The Stand. I think The Stand is a really good example of one where it's an apocalypse story, which is like, you know, a super flu comes through and kills a bunch of people, and here's a group of survivors. We've seen that story 1,000 times. But then he takes it to this really weird biblical place with like the devil and wrapped up in Randall and like the and then you have, you know, the literally you have the wizened old African American character down in the South, literally in a cornfield calling people to her. Like you have these really weird tropes that he adds into this like flu epidemic thing, and it becomes this really interesting story about like good versus evil on like a national scale, global scale almost. So I really love The Stand because it doesn't ever get to that point where it comes back around to being boring. But like I think that maybe that's why I've always preferred more of his shorter stories, you know, like Secret Window or even Lawnmower Man, for as weird as the short story of that one is actually super enjoyable for me. Or there's one that I remember when I was a kid about this dude going to a therapist talking about how he's seen the boogeyman his whole life. And of course, the reveal at the end is that the therapist is the boogeyman.
Yeah. Saw that coming a mile away, Stephen King.
Exactly. Well, and that's just it, is like he works in small doses because he does these tropey things so you know how they're going to end, but then he does them in really interesting ways. So you're fine reading it even though you know how the ending is going to come along, right? Because because he does something interesting enough to keep you hooked in. And the problem is that if that's in 20 pages, that works great. The problem is when he's writing these 600-page tomes and you're like, after page 400, you're like, all right, I get it. I know what's going to happen. Just get to it and let it happen. And like it takes him another 200 pages to get there, right?
Yeah.
So like I love Stephen King and I've read a ton of his stuff and will continue to, but he is a long-winded man when it comes to some of his writing. So like the idea of it being cut down is fine for me. And so I'm trying to find that book. I'm trying to find the next Stephen King book that I can get into that isn't that, because like a lot of the latest ones that he's put out have suffered from that problem for me. What was the one he did about the JFK assassination that they turned into the James Franco book? Like 11/22.
Yeah.
Like that one is just way, like the concept is, you know, this guy finds the ability to time travel and decides to save Kennedy. Like that sounds like the most trashy airport novel ever. But of course, being King, it goes to this really weird place of him dealing with all the repercussions and all that stuff and takes it to a more interesting place. But I know that thing is so damn long that by the time I get, you know, 2/3 of the way through, I'm not going to want to finish it. And so that's not the one for me. I've got to find something though.
I get you. I feel that. Recently, books that I've gotten back into, I'm trying to pare down everything. I'm trying to go a little bit more minimalist in my life. So I'm looking at these books that I love, but like I own way too many copies of, and seeing if I can like condense it down. Now, my Stephen King is Douglas Adams. I love Douglas Adams. I devoured all of his stuff as a kid. Those were the books that I read.
It's not a bad alternative.
No, really. You know, it's horror sci-fi right there. Like there's the argument and the war. And I have so many copies of The Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul and Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, because I did my senior thesis in high school on Douglas Adams. So I had 3 copies of Dirk Gently's Holistic Detective Agency, one to read, one to mark the fuck up, and one to like cut up and actually like sort of mangle and destroy to put ideas together. Same with like Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So I have all these copies of these books. Long Dark Tea Time is just my favorite Douglas Adams book. So if I go to a used bookstore and I find a copy, I'm gonna buy it. And that's how I got like my really nice first edition of that book that I love, and it's like a huge part of my collection. But my first exposure to Dirk Gently, because really it was Hitchhiker's Guide in this house, was I was in Canada. And did you ever take a band trip to Canada? That's a question I'm going to ask.
No, we usually stopped in the New York area. That was about as far as we ever
Not
went.
a rite of passage for everybody, I suppose, but rite of passage for me was my band trip to Canada, and like one of the stops was a Barnes and Nobles. Like we're going to be at this Barnes and Nobles for an hour. And what I saw there, and this is the only time I ever saw this book, was it was called the Dirk Gently Omnibus, and it had Holistic Detective Agency and Long Dark Tea Time of the Soul in one book.
Oh.
And I looked at it, and like with the Canadian conversion, I'm like, no, this is not worth buying right now, right?
Right.
But
yeah.
it's always like been this book that's eluded me because like I saw it that one time in Canada, and like part of me thought that it didn't exist. So then as I'm trying to like pare down and get it down to like one copy of stuff, I'm looking for tomes and collections. Like I have all my Hitchhiker's books condensed down from like the 20 that I owned into the one collection of 1 through 5 and Young Zaphod Plays It Safe. I'm happy with that. I'm happy to have that collection. But I'm
Cool.
like, I wish that this omnibus existed. I wish I could find it. Found a copy of it last week.
Oh my God, that's awesome.
So I'm a big fan of if I own a book, I need to read through the book. So even though I've read those stories countless times, right?
You are better than me, man. I think a third of the books I own I've actually read all the way through to the end.
Right.
But anyway.
But that's the thing. But if I'm going to hold on to these books, I'm going to have to read through them again.
Fair enough.
I've started reading it again, and it's just so happy. Like I understand why a young me gravitated more to the Dirk Gently books as opposed to the Hitchhiker books, which I still think are fantastic. But Dirk Gently, like, there's just this cocksure attitude about him that, like, sort of hews in line with the type of person that I am. Like, I kind of walk on the fringes of life and bluster in and out of people's lives the way that he tends to.
Right. And I mean, like, let's look at, what's his name from the Hitchhiker's books, character-wise.
Zaphod?
No, the main dude.
Arthur Dent?
Yeah, Arthur. I mean, like,
Ford
if you look
Prefect.
at Arthur versus Dirk, right? Like, I can totally, I myself actually kind of fall more towards Gently. Like, I love Arthur though, and like the Hitchhiker's books are always going to be the books from Adams for me. But like, I can totally understand why somebody would gravitate more towards Gently, because he's a little bit more of an interesting character, to be entirely honest.
Well,
Which
funny
is kind
you
of the
should
point of
mention that,
Arthur.
Sejan. That's what the thesis was, and that is the fact that those two books are very different, as you just pointed out, right?
Right.
But it is the same 6 base character types in each of them, and Dirk Gently really is, like, without question, Zaphod Beeblebrox. Actually, no, he's Ford Prefect in my whole thing. Him and Ford are the same.
Yeah.
'Cause he's like this wise, all-knowing guy.
Yeah.
Macduff is sort of his Arthur Dent. So, like, the Gently books are, if the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Ford Prefect was the main character.
Which is why you're more drawn to them, obviously.
Yeah.
Like,
Because Ford is this explorer and this adventurer. Gordon would actually be the Zaphod Beeblebrox, the ghost.
Nice.
Of Richard's girlfriend.
Have you checked out, I believe it is Elijah Wood that did the live action Dirk Gently stuff, right?
So here's the problem. I can't get into it, and here's why.
All right.
In 2010, I want to say, maybe it was 2009, they originally tried to do a Dirk Gently series. Like, it was going to be their companion piece to Sherlock Holmes. They're like, we need something like Sherlock Holmes, but, like, actually funny. Like, not just funny because Benedict Cumberbatch just kind of a dickhead. No, you know what I mean, right? Like, I'm not trying to be mean. Like, funny on purpose, not like...
Right, it's not sardonic. It's actually like...
Actually comedy.
And it has a heart to it in a way that Sherlock only does because of Martin Freeman and Benedict Cumberbatch. Right, exactly.
Yeah. So they tried it with Dirk Gently, and the very first episode is adapted from that first story. And then the stuff that they pulled, they ended up doing 4 episodes with it. And it's Stephen Mangan from Green Wing who's playing Dirk.
Oh, man.
And he's perfect as Dirk. He's such a perfect Dirk that, like, and I loved that show. Like, I devoured all 4 of those episodes, and I've watched them countless times because,
I wonder if they're available anywhere on, like, Amazon or something, because now I really want to get a hold of them.
If I can probably get a copy over to you, because I have copies, like, legal copies that I was able to get, so I can probably get them over to you, because I'd love to hear what you feel about this show, because it was, like, something that Will and I were watching concurrently. And I'm just like, this is great. And both of us really liked it, but it didn't get picked up outside of that first Sherlock-sized season.
Yeah, my current one in that vein right now is actually Endeavor. But yeah, sorry, keep going.
No, and so, like, when I heard they're doing it again, I'm like, really? They're doing it again? And then like I looked into it and I'm like, but this is not Dirk Gently. Like those were so Dirk Gently, it kind of hurt to be like, they're capable of doing this, right? Like I saw Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy movie in 2005 and was like, oh, Douglas Adams just can't be adapted. And then I saw the Dirk Gently stuff and I'm like, oh no, it can be adapted. They just didn't do a great job adapting it. Because it's not the same exact story. Like it's modernized for the time in very interesting ways that really like stand out and are excellent. Like, I really like that one. So then I'm like, I can't watch another one. And it's not that I'm afraid it's going to fail. I'm afraid it's going to succeed where the one that I actually backed didn't. So like...
Yeah, but man, like you got to think of it like as a fan, you want this stuff to exist, right? Like,
yeah, that's true. Like, I'm happy that I got another adaptation, and like, once it's all available for consumption, like if it ever comes to Netflix or Amazon, the services that I ascribe to, I will probably check it out. Like, I'm not so big that I'm going to stand in my own way of enjoying something, but that's why I was like, it's gonna take some time for me because Stephen Mangan is my Dirk Gently. And Richard McDuff is the guy. I can't think of the actor's name right now, and it kills me. But did you see The World's End?
Yes.
The bully from The World's End is Richard McDuff.
Awesome. That's
so it is just like, this is great because like they're not like, you look at those guys and I'm like, well, that's not really what I ever imagined for these characters. But then they embody what those characters are so well that I'm like, I'm completely fine with it. Right? Like, it's an adaptation that works, and I find like I struggle to find those.
Yeah, adaptations are weird, and we're definitely going to have more and more conversations about them as things go on here. I mean, like I said, we have It coming out soon, and I'm sure there's going to be all sorts of crazy stuff for us to talk about with that. But yeah, like getting back into some fun reading has been nice, especially with school getting so crazy right now. It's been nice to not have to focus on like texts that are 3 levels above what I want to be reading, you know?
I get that 100%, buddy.
Yeah.
All right.
Other than that, I think that's what I've been up to this week. I think that this has been my week for you guys.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I've been doing too, and I got to get back to it. I told myself I'm going to unlock that last tome in Yooka-Laylee. So, do you have anything else to add, Sejin, before we...
No, just everybody be kind. That's all.
Yeah, be excellent to each other, because God gave rock and roll to you.
And now I'm going to go watch
roll to everyone.
Everyone.
Take it away, William.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Stephen Serwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.